Centuries ago, Indonesia was a land where Hindu and Buddhist kingdoms flourished. Grand temples rose from the jungle, and teachings of enlightenment shaped the beliefs and practices of its people. But today, Indonesia is the largest Muslim-majority country in the world. How did such a dramatic transformation happen? What caused the decline of these ancient traditions and the rise of a new faith? And how did Bali manage to keep its Hindu roots? Let's explore the fascinating history of Indonesia's religious journey. Hinduism and Buddhism first arrived in Indonesia around the 1st century CE, brought by Indian traders and scholars through sea routes. These religions quickly spread through Sumatra, Java, and Bali, becoming the main spiritual traditions in many kingdoms. One of the earliest and most powerful of these was the Srivijaya Empire, which thrived from the 7th to the 13th century. Based in Sumatra, Srivijaya was a major center for Mahayana Buddhism and a key player in the region's trade. The empire became known for its learning and attracted Buddhist scholars from across Asia. Later, from the 13th to the 16th century, the Majapahit Empire rose to prominence, centered in Java. Majapahit successfully combined Hindu and Buddhist beliefs, allowing both religions to exist side by side. The empire is still remembered for its remarkable architecture, including the famous Borobudur Temple, one of the largest Buddhist monuments in the world, and the stunning Prambanan Temple complex, dedicated to Hindu deities. These incredible temples, which still stand today, are not just historical sites. They are symbols of the powerful influence Hinduism and Buddhism once had over Indonesia. But despite their greatness, these religions eventually declined, making way for the rise of Islam, which would reshape the spiritual identity of the region forever. The rise of Islam in Indonesia. In the 13th century, Islam began spreading through Indonesia, brought by Muslim traders from India, Arabia, and Persia. These traders were part of the busy maritime trade routes that connected Southeast Asia to the wider world. Islam first took root in Sumatra and gradually made its way to Java and other islands. As Islamic sultanates began to rise in Java and Sumatra, the once powerful Hindu-Buddhist kingdoms started to decline. Many local rulers saw political and economic benefits in aligning themselves with the Muslim world, which gave them access to valuable trade networks. Their conversions to Islam helped speed up the spread of the religion across the islands. One of the last great Hindu-Buddhist kingdoms, the Majapahit Empire, weakened in the 16th century due to internal conflicts and the growing influence of these Islamic sultanates. Eventually, the Majapahit Empire collapsed, marking a significant shift in the region's religious and political landscape. Sufi missionaries played a crucial role in this process. Their mystical and adaptable approach to Islam allowed it to blend with local traditions and beliefs, making the new religion more appealing to the people. Over time, Islam merged with these local customs, creating a distinctly Indonesian form of the faith. By the 16th century, much of Sumatra, Java, and other islands were under the control of Islamic sultanates, and the influence of Islam continued to grow as more rulers embraced the religion. Dutch colonial rule and its impact on religion. In the early 17th century, the Dutch East India Company, VOC, arrived in Indonesia, driven by the profitable spice trade. Spices like nutmeg, cloves, and pepper were in high demand in Europe, making Indonesia a key region for trade. By the 18th century, the VOC had established control over the archipelago's trade networks, laying the groundwork for over 300 years of Dutch colonial rule. The Dutch primarily focused on controlling trade rather than direct governance. To keep the peace, they allowed local rulers to maintain authority as long as they cooperated with Dutch economic interests. This approach ensured that Islam, Hinduism, and Buddhism continued to thrive without interference from the Dutch. This religious tolerance helped avoid conflict and maintain stability throughout the colony. While the VOC permitted local religions to continue, Christian missionaries did spread their faith, particularly in the Moluccas, Sulawesi, and parts of Sumatra. Despite these efforts, Christianity remained a minority in major islands like Java and Bali, where Islam and Hinduism were already deeply entrenched. For the Dutch, maintaining religious tolerance was a strategic move to ensure smooth trade operations. By allowing local rulers to practice their beliefs and govern their people, they were able to focus on economic gains without provoking resistance. Unlike other colonial powers, the Dutch did not aggressively push for religious conversion, ensuring that Indonesia's diverse spiritual landscape largely remained intact. By the 19th century, with the collapse of the VOC and direct control taken by the Dutch government, Islam had grown even stronger, especially in Java, while Hinduism remained dominant in Bali. Christianity had spread in certain areas, but overall, the religious fabric of Indonesia had been preserved throughout the colonial era, with the Dutch preferring pragmatic trade control over religious domination. Islamic resistance and the fight for Indonesian independence. As Dutch control expanded in the 19th century, particularly after the collapse of the VOC, Islamic resistance movements began to rise across Indonesia. The Dutch viewed Islam with suspicion, fearing its ability to unite large segments of the population under a common cause of anti-colonialism. These Islamic movements became a key force in resisting Dutch rule. The end of Dutch colonialism came after a long and bloody struggle for independence. The rise of Indonesian nationalism, combined with the power vacuum left by the Japanese occupation during World War II and the international momentum for decolonization, fueled this effort. After years of conflict, Indonesia finally achieved official recognition of its independence in 1949, marking the end of more than 300 years of colonial rule. However, the road to sovereignty was not without challenges. Even after independence, Indonesia faced political and social struggles, but it has since grown into a diverse and dynamic nation with a rich cultural and religious identity. Islam played a crucial role in the fight for independence, offering a unifying identity for much of the population. It not only fueled resistance against the Dutch, but also became a central rallying point for anti-colonial movements. Islamic organizations and militias were at the forefront of the struggle, especially during the Indonesian National Revolution. Their contributions were key in securing independence in 1949, and Islam continued to shape Indonesia's national identity and political landscape long after colonial rule ended. Bali, a Hindu sanctuary amidst an Islamic wave. While much of Java and Sumatra embraced Islam, Bali remained a bastion of Hinduism, preserving its rich spiritual traditions in the face of sweeping religious changes across Indonesia. When the Majapahit Empire, the last great Hindu-Buddhist kingdom in Java, collapsed in the 16th century, many Hindu nobles, priests and artists fled to Bali. The island became a refuge for Hindu culture, which continued to thrive in relative isolation. Bali's geographical distance from the Islamic sultanates of Java and Sumatra played a crucial role in its ability to retain its Hindu identity. While the rest of Indonesia was gradually absorbed into the Islamic world, Bali's isolation, both from the rise of Islam and from major trade routes, allowed it to protect and preserve its Hindu traditions. This physical separation shielded the island from the religious transformations happening on the larger islands and gave it the space to evolve its own unique spiritual practices. The Balinese form of Hinduism is particularly fascinating for its integration of Buddhism and local animist traditions, resulting in a uniquely Balinese version of the faith. Hindu rituals, temple ceremonies and festivals are deeply woven into daily life. Temples are not just places of worship, but are also integral to community and family life. Major ceremonies like Galungan and Kuningan, which celebrates the victory of Dharma over Adharma, good over evil, and Nyepi, the Balinese New Year, marked by a day of silence and reflection, are central to the Balinese identity. These traditions not only honor Hindu gods, but also reflect the island's deep connection to its local spirits and ancestors. Balinese culture is also closely tied to its religious art forms. Traditional dances, shadow puppetry, and religious storytelling are deeply influenced by Hindu epics, such as the Ramayana and Mahabharata. These performances are not merely entertainment, but are seen as offerings to the gods and spirits, reinforcing the connection between art, religion, and daily life. Today, Bali stands as a unique cultural and spiritual enclave within a predominantly Muslim nation. Its ability to maintain these rich traditions, from grand temple ceremonies to daily offerings of rice and flowers, reflects the strength and resilience of Balinese Hinduism and its deep-rooted connection to the island's identity. Indonesia's religious landscape is a testament to the tides of history, shaped by waves of cultural exchange, political power, and economic ambition. Once, the islands were home to thriving Hindu and Buddhist empires, their grand temples standing as symbols of spiritual and philosophical enlightenment. But as the world changed, so did Indonesia. Trade routes opened new doors, and with them came the rise of Islam, a faith that would sweep across the islands, uniting diverse peoples under a new spiritual banner. Islam's rise wasn't just a story of religious conversion, but of political alliances, trade dominance, and the shifting power of sultanates. By the time the Dutch arrived, Islam had already taken root, and despite colonial attempts to impose control, Islamic resistance only grew stronger, carving a permanent place for the religion in the hearts of Indonesians. Today, Indonesia is the world's largest Muslim nation, with over 87% of its people identifying as Muslim, a powerful legacy of the cultural forces that shaped the islands. But amidst this vast ocean of Islam, Bali stands alone, a jewel of Hindu tradition, where ancient rituals, vibrant festivals, and temples dedicated to gods of old continue to thrive. It is here, on this island, that the remnants of the Majapahit Empire and the migration of Hindu elites from Java found refuge, preserving their spiritual heritage. Bali's isolation became its strength, allowing it to nurture a unique form of Hinduism that is inseparable from its identity. Indonesia's religious history is not just one of conquest or conversion. It is a story of resilience, adaptation, and the blending of faiths. From the great Hindu-Buddhist kingdoms to the spread of Islam and the enduring traditions of Bali, Indonesia remains a living example of how diverse spiritual practices can coexist, influence each other, and endure through time. It is a land where history is written in the stones of temples, whispered in the prayers of mosques, and carried in the rituals of daily life. The story of Indonesia is the story of survival, evolution, and the unbreakable bond between culture and belief.